Hey everyone, and welcome to Recharge the Podcast. I'm David Coe. This is another special episode as we have part 2 of my conversation with Dr. Jack Rowe. So Jack, I want to shift the conversation a little bit first before we hit mental health to aging. I want to talk a little about aging. So before your Aetna experience, you co-authored a very, very successful book around successful aging. And really, I think fundamentally changed the way people think about getting older. And you led programs at Harvard and other areas where you talked about the incredible number of people that are living longer today and how crucial it is for society to adapt care to an aging population. Couple of questions here. The first one is, what do we as a society fundamentally misunderstand about aging?
Well, I think the first thing that we misunderstand about aging is that it's not all about the baby boom.
Hmm.
That if you talk to policymakers, as I do, senators and congressmen and mayors and so on, and you try to get their attention to the aging of the population as a major issue that has huge policy implications for Social Security and Medicare and housing and transportation and
Absolutely.
education and the workforce and retirement and everything. And they have this view that there's the baby boom, which has caused this aging, crisis, but it's like a swallowed mouse which is passing through a snake. And when it passes out the other end, we'll be back to where we were. That's the first myth.
Okay.
And that's not true, because at the same time that we had the baby boom, we've had a very substantial increase in life expectancy and a very substantial decrease in fertility rate, births. So we're basically changing the structure of our society from a pyramid to a rectangle. The second thing that people don't understand about aging is that the fundamental institutions of our society, and that by that I mean work and retirement policies and education and healthcare and travel and leisure. Those institutions were not designed to support a population with the age distribution that we are going to have. So we have to re-engineer the core institutions of our society if we are to successfully deal with this demographic transformation. The third thing that people don't understand about aging is that older people have a lot to offer. There is a tremendous amount of social capital. Study after study after study shows that older workers are productive. In fact, mixed age teams are better than all young teams. They're not as fast, but they make fewer errors. The quality is better. Employers are beginning to understand this. Volunteerism is incredibly important and valuable to our society. Our older cohort has a lot of wisdom, and many psychological studies have shown that older people are better at some things than middle-aged people, like conflict resolution. How's that for an idea? Conflict, we could use a little of that, a little expertise in conflict resolution. So there are older people are more emotionally stable. Even the most recent studies during the pandemic showed that middle-aged people handled the pandemic very badly. Older people handled it better. They're more stable when bad things happen. There are many strengths that we are not working effectively to incorporate in our society.
Well, let me ask you on that. With aging, how does that tie into aging for mental health and social?
It's incredibly important. Since the pandemic, we've had a 30% prevalence of anxiety and depression in the general population. And our work has shown that if we particularly look at the lower half of the income distribution, there's this myth that there's the middle class. There are poor people, and then the middle class, which goes from like the 15th centile of income to 70th, and then there's the upper class. That's not true. It's the lower middle class from the 15th centile to the 40th or so acts much more like poor people. But they don't have the advantages in some way, if you can say poor people have advantages, in that they're not eligible for Medicaid or food stamps or low-income housing or so on and so on. But they don't have enough to live. And those individuals, particularly as they're entering late life, they're in the latter part of the Middle Ages, have chronic financial insecurity. And we have shown that that contributes very, very substantially to impairments in mental health. So we have an epidemic of mental health problems in the lower half. We're not talking about 10% of the population, but 40% of the population. And they are skating toward late life in a situation which is much more precarious than their predecessors. And then you can say, well, how can we mitigate this? And our research so far, and we haven't tested the Calm app, maybe that
That's next.
is a good idea. But what we do find is that if these people who are under chronic financial insecurity, now, I don't mean they're on the street, they're working two jobs, actually, as I said, they're working hard, but they're trying to educate their kids, they're trying to take care of their healthcare expenses, they're trying to have a life, eke out a small vacation once a year. If they have social support, if they report to us, yes, I have a lot of social support from my spouse or my family, my friends, then they don't feel stressed. And there are lots of ways that we can provide support. Your company provides support. You help employers provide support. Employers can identify those employees who are maybe living alone, most at risk for being isolated, and generate programs and volunteer efforts and group efforts and specific supports like yours and others that can actually mitigate the chronic stress that these people are in. And I think that that's going to be remarkably important, because if we go back to what I said a few minutes ago about the benefits of older populations, the social capital that we need to unlock, we can't unlock that social capital if people are depressed and anxious.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So we have to take care of that before we can then fully engage them.
And when you talk about people being depressed, anxious, and for the broader population, are you also, because you've talked about this, are you also lumping in your physical health as well? Because
we find physical health as well. And what we do is we ask questions about, like, how many days a month are you unable to function fully because of mental health issues? Or how many days a month are you unable to function fully because of physical issues?
Sure.
My back, can't get out of bed. I just can't do it today, right? But that's often a mix of depression as well. And then the third question we ask is, how do you rate your general health? And we find that stress drives down all these measures.
Let me turn it to advice that you have for the next generation of healthcare leaders. So you continue to work in healthcare. You're very active across, whether it's policy, mentorship, teaching. You've seen healthcare evolve now over decades, and you see the challenges that are happening with cost pressure, whether it's access and the mental health crisis that we're in today. What advice do you have for the next generation of healthcare leaders, even for myself, who are trying to improve the current system? And what gives you hope that we can actually achieve it?
Well, it's interesting. I've been thinking about this recently because I have to give a commencement address at a medical school, and I'm thinking, what am I going to tell these graduates? And the first thing I would tell them is I envy them. I envy
Hmm.
them. I'm not buying any of this stuff about I'm too busy. I have too much paperwork, too many HMOs, too many pressures on me, too much commercialization of healthcare. They have tools in their toolkit to cure people
Hmm.
that I didn't imagine when I was in training. Cancer has become a chronic disease for many
Hmm.
people, if not cured. You know how many millions of people didn't die of heart attacks since we developed coronary artery approaches and transplants?
Hmm.
Remarkable advances. I envy them so much. I wish I had those tools.
Hmm.
And I tell them also that in addition to dramatic advances in treatment of disease and the diagnosis of disease, what they have also benefited from is a tremendous diversification in the ways that they can use their medical training during their life to help people and our health system. It used to be you get your medical degree, you get your black bag, and you go into practice.
Hmm.
Or you go into a laboratory like I did. But now there are management jobs. There's even
Sure.
for-profit jobs. And even better, David, and I think this is really exciting, and I've seen this over the last decade. 10 years ago, if you went into pharmaceuticals or for-profit insurance, that you weren't coming back.
Right.
Okay? That was a one-way trip. I'm a professor at Columbia University, right? I came back. I made it back through the membrane,
Right.
right?
Right. Full circle.
Full circle, because they say this guy may have learned something over there in the for-profit sector that he can help us here at
Absolutely.
Columbia
Absolutely.
struggle with our healthcare
Yeah.
problems. And so I think that that's been a really major change. And I benefited from that. But
Yeah.
I think that that's one of the really key things. So that these physicians beginning their careers should understand that they have a huge number of options. They're going to live a long time. Their career is going to be very long. They don't have to decide in the first 3 years what to do. You can do something for 11 years, like I did, and then go into a closet and come out with a different uniform on and do something else and enjoy it all. And I've been very, very grateful. Obviously, I've been very, very fortunate in my career, but I do envy them.
Well, on that note, Jack, I know we could keep going for quite some time, but we got to call it soon. But before we wrap, I'd like to end every episode with a few questions. It's not quite a speed round, but I'm going to try to make it one. I'm actually going to ask you 5 questions here. Okay. Um, what's something about
Yes, no, no,
No,
yes.
yes, exactly. They're not exactly as yes, no questions, but what's something about you that might surprise people?
I am a fanatic devotee of women's college basketball,
Oh, favorite team?
Connecticut.
Okay. They're doing
Now,
quite well.
I was the chairman of the board at the
Okay.
University of Connecticut
Need some
for 6
tickets.
years, and I got hooked on women's college basketball.
Okay. Uh, this could be yes, no. Will hospitals still exist in 30 years from now?
Yes.
Okay. You inspire so many people. Who inspires you?
Other than Gino Auriemma, the coach of the University of Connecticut women's basketball team. Yeah. I'm inspired by people who have been effective leaders and who I have watched their leadership and seen what it can mean, how important it is. It's not about management. It's about leadership. Um, you need both, but managers do the right thing.
Hmm.
Do things right, rather. I mean, managers do things exactly right, but leaders do the right things. They pick the right issues to deal with. So there are leaders in the corporate world, and there are leaders in research, and there are leaders in healthcare that I look to. That's where I find my North Star.
Yeah, fantastic. What's one healthcare idea that sounded crazy 20 years ago, but now just looks obvious?
Well, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, not smoking would have been, it's kind
That's
of,
a good one.
that's
That's
an
a good one.
obvious
That's
one.
an obvious one.
Um,
Okay,
I,
that's it. Perfect. And finally, what is your favorite way to recharge?
I think it's really, really important to not bring the work home, to disengage, to relate to family, to a good book, to the show I went to yesterday.
Sure.
I mean, I think saying, no, no, I've got to work on this problem all weekend because I haven't figured out. No, no, no. People asked me when I was at Aetna, oh, what a job. How do you sleep in that job? And I had this jocular answer. I'd say, I sleep like a baby. I sleep 2 hours. I cry 2 hours. I sleep 2 hours. But the answer was I slept like a baby,
Excellent.
and I just leave it at work and refresh, and you call that recharge,
Hmm.
and then you can deal with it when you come back.
Well, it could be refreshed going forward. That's fantastic. Thank you for that. Dr. Rowe, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation as much as I have, please like and share this episode with a friend, a teammate, or anyone who would love it as much as I did today. And please subscribe to our channel so you can all catch the latest episodes of Recharge or Refresh in the future. Thank you all for listening and see you next time. Thank you again, Dr. Rowe. Really appreciate
Thank you,
this
Dave.
conversation. Hey everyone, I was recently on a podcast, Rapid Response with Bob Safian, where we talked about the difference between stress that builds you up and stress that burns you out, and why even the CEO of a meditation company isn't immune. It was a fun and honest conversation, especially at a time where everything is just moving so fast. When change hits, how do leaders actually respond? That's what Rapid Response is all about. Bob Safian, former editor in chief of Fast Company, breaks down what's happening, what's at stake, and what smart leadership really looks like in this moment. If you like Recharge, give Rapid Response a try. It's clear, it's compelling, and built for right now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.